So let's take a look at how some of the outer particles were generated in the scene. So there's lots of different ways of doing particles in Maya. So if you're under dynamics over here, you can simply go to particles and you can say create emitter, or you can also use the particle tool, emit from object, or you can also use a selected object as emitter. So what I'm going to do right now is show you one of the examples from the scene. So if I simply go to particles, create emitter, and if I go to the options, you'll see that right over here it's asking for an emitter name, and also over here an emitter type. So a lot of different types of emitters. The omni, which will go in all directions, pretty much a directional emitter, which you'll have to specify directions, and a volume emitter, which allows you different shapes of objects that you can use. So for example, if you use a volume, then you have other options over here. You want the volume to be a cube, sphere, cylinder, cone, or torus. So some of the examples in the scene we're using a directional emitter. So if I use a directional emitter right now, you can see immediately it's got rate per particle second. So I can say give me 200 particles per second. I can specify the speed of the particle, so maybe slightly more over here, and the randomization in the speed, so that all particles are not moving at the same speed. So if I simply say create right now, and if I move this up, you can see that two things happen. First, if I go to the outliner, you can see that I've got an emitter node and a particle node. So there are two different things that just happened over here. So let's minimize this one more time. And right now I'm just going to hit play. You can see that you just see a simple streak of particles, which is not so interesting to watch. So further, what you can do is you can select this, go to Control A, the attribute editor, and you can have the particle shape node and the emitter node. So let's say if I go to the emitter node right here, I have the directional emitter, the rate per particle, the particles per second, which we had changed. But then I have something else right at the bottom over here called the direction it's going in. So right now it's going in the X direction, which is fine. I can also specify a spread. So let's say if I want to give a spread. Now, I would never recommend scrubbing on your system when you're doing particle systems or any kind of dynamics. Always go to the first frame and then hit play again. So right now you can see that I'm getting it in this direction right here. So if I go back over here, so that's my direction X, Y, and Z. I can also have a little bit of Y direction if I want to, like a 0.5. And now if I go here, you can see it's going in that direction. So that's my particle system with a spread of 0.28. I can increase the spread, go back to the first frame, and play. Furthermore, what you can do is you can also go to your particle shape, and you have right over here, let me just open this. Actually, let's keep it this way because I need to play it. I can use hotkeys to Alt-V is to play and pause. Particle render type, right now it's at points. I can have it at multi-streak, spheres, and so on. Right now, for this example, I'm going to keep it at blobby surface. So, and if I hit 5 over here, you can see that you can nicely see the surfaces, and that's what one of the particle systems in the scene was using. The one I pointed out in the video, in the earlier video. If you go to add attributes for, if you click on this button, you can see that you can have certain attributes for this one, wherein I can dial the radius either up or down. And I have a threshold value right here. So let's say if I hit play now, this is what you get. So they're all emitting from that one point right there. I would highly recommend, as of now, just use anything, any particle that just says a S/W, which means software, which means that it'll render with a Maya software renderer. So if I just hit render right now, you can see that it's rendering right there. As opposed to if I go to, let's say, multi-streak in this case, wherein you still have the particles displayed over here, and I can simply just go here to see the particles right over there. If I simply hit render right now, you can see I don't see anything, and that's a different concept in Maya, so let's not worry about that. So I would highly recommend just using anything that's with the software renderer, which is SW. Then you can add, let's go back actually and let's switch that to blobby. And let's keep the blobby surfaces to about 0.15, let's say. Furthermore, you can apply a lot of other things to particles, like fields. So if you go under fields over here, you can apply all these fields to your particles. So if I simply, with the particle selected, if I simply hit gravity right now, and if I rewind again and hit play, you can see all the particles are nicely falling down right there. So, which is pretty nice. So you can also have particles bounce off of other things. So if I simply make, let's say, a simple plane, and right now if I simply take this plane and rotate it, let's say around 90 degrees, I can also have, and let's turn off the grid. So right now if I hit play, you'll see that these particles are falling, but they're going through the plane. So in that case, I can select the particles and the plane, and I can go to particles, let's say make collide. So just under particles, make collide. Wherein I can then go and hit play again, and you'll see that the particles nicely bounce off of that plane. Now if they're bouncing too much, as in this case they are, I can then go to the plane, and there's something called a geoconnector node over here, and I can take the resilience of this down to like 0.2. So in this case, you'll see that the particles nicely come out, and they're nicely coming. They're not bouncing as much, very little bounce. So a lot of things you can do. You can also apply what are called turbulence fields to the particles. So I would highly recommend trying these out. And every field that you apply, if you go to your outliner again, you'll see that it's listed over here, the gravity, the turbulence. So right now if I click on the turbulence and hit Control A, it takes me to its attributes. It's got something called a magnitude. So if I increase the magnitude to 100 in this case, you'll see the particles are behaving differently than before. Way different. And a good way to see what kind of field is applied on the particle, you can also go to Window, Relationship Editors, and you can go to Dynamic Relationships. And right now, if you select your particle system, and I would highly recommend naming it. So if you select this one, you'll see that right under fields over here, it's telling me that the gravity and turbulence is applied to this particle system. So turn this off. Let's say if I don't want the turbulence, I can simply just uncheck this. And right now, if I rewind and play, you'll see that the turbulence is no longer active on that particle system. So this was one of the particle system types, like the blobby surface was used in that fish, in the panda example in the ocean.